Now, the most reasonable talk show host from Sob Choppy to the Redneck Riviera, here is Bob Kerrigan.
Good evening and welcome to Within Reason. Bob Kerrigan here tonight with my partner Bill Rankin. Good to have you, Mr.
Nice
Rankin.
to be here, providing some balance and additional crabbiness where necessary.
There are huge problems in public schools, and Bill taught for a year in our local public schools. But I think that there are so many good things that are happening in the public schools that people don't really know about, and to me it's just heartbreaking that we allow a generally a public attitude, it's not worth a damn, they're not doing anything, and these kids are getting away with this and that, and it's terrible. You were in the public school system and taught some classes of just average students, right? I mean, and I know you had some interesting experiences there, but I just hated to leave that with a general disparagement of public education.
I don't disagree with you, and I met teachers who were not 100%, but there are teachers in our public schools who are very dedicated, who are working for less money than they could make somewhere else, and their working conditions are not very good.
Not very good.
I felt kind of beholden to them. I mean, we need these people. We need a generation coming along who are literate and productive. And
well, one of the terrible things that Jeb Bush did, in my opinion, did so many terrible things for Florida, but one of the things that he really pressed for was the funding for these outlier type school programs and schools with no accountability. He refused to have any accountability for the money. They came up with this scholarship program where corporations got a credit against their tax liability to award scholarships to every half-baked, goofy school that some Republican donor dreamed up to scoff money from the state.
Are you against choice, against giving the parents a choice of what schools their kids go to?
I think it mischaracterizes it when you say choice, meaning public school or we will give you money to go to another school. To me, public education is public education. If you don't want to go to a public school, then go to some other school. In terms of parents picking the school, I think it's a huge problem because of transportation. I mean, say, well, I'm wealthy enough, I'll be able to take my child over to such and such. So I remember this used to be true in Cordova Park. All the mothers would get together. So this is very chauvinistic probably, but all the mothers would get together and kind of gee-haw about who is the best teacher. And they all demanded this teacher, their little Jimmy or Susie got that teacher. I mean, and the parents are the worst ones to really understand the quality of the education, and I think that's true of the teacher, of the school, of the administration. They're not really able to judge, so it becomes very whimsical. So you have people flooding to one school, then they're running to another school, and you can't stabilize the academic support, the administrative support. So to answer your question, I don't think school choice is a good idea in public education. To me, the real accountability is what product does the teacher start with, and what product does the teacher end with?
Right.
And what have they done with the cards that have been dealt to them? And some of these schools, as you know, these kids have no home. I mean, they're shuttled from one
come to school.
auntie or somebody or family member or whatever. And it's not just the black kids. I didn't mean to say that racially, but it is a major problem in the black community. In my opinion, it has been a major problem in the black community that we've not had real good parent support in these schools. And until we do, these kids come in.
And that's the other side of that coin. I mean, I was exposed to Pensacola High has the International Baccalaureate program. And when you had an open house, all those parents showed up, and they were real interested in the curriculum and making sure that they got good grades.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the kids in the regular program, judging by who showed up at an open house, there was no support. I mean, you'd have a whole class, and one parent would show up.
And you have teachers then that are dealing with this problem. Kids come to school tired, hungry, without adequate background, and the teachers then take them from, say, this level to this level remarkably, but when they take the standardized test, they're considered dumb or failing or whatever. So the teachers don't get credited for it. And I don't know how, Bill, you test it. You were in the system. I don't know how you test it. But
you got to have some accountability.
I agree with accountability.
I don't know enough about FCAT really to criticize it. Some of our kids went to a private school, and the private school would brag that our children performed 2 grade levels above where the other children performed. And the reason for that was there was stability in the home. The parents at least cared enough to pay tuition, so they cared about the kids. They had books in the home. They had stable families. And that is the only reason, I think, that these kids, they had a very safe, stable environment. They had parents who cared. And
isn't the high correlation income of families?
Yes,
Isn't that the single?
Better than education, it's income.
Income.
Yeah. If mom has to work 3 jobs or worse, and they're not around, and the kids are latchkey kids. So my view of this is high school is that, especially in the early years, the high school students' culture was their own teenage culture. They weren't exposed to an adult culture, really. And the wrong things mattered to them. And education wasn't even on the list.
No.
They didn't care. You didn't gain any status by having a good vocabulary, for sure. I have this view of it on the national level. First of all, educating children is not one of the enumerated powers in the Constitution. You've got to go to the necessary and proper clause. President Reagan wanted to abolish the Department of Education. I still think that's a good idea. Now we've got to hire people to write grants so we can go back to Washington and get some of our money back for stuff. Why in the world is the national government, and Obama is up to here in it. He wants the national government to be involved from preschool through college. I don't know why that's necessarily a function of the national government, like the post office, the military, pollution control, and certain things that you kind of need a national government for. I think it'd be wonderful to abolish the Department of Education at the national level and lower our taxes a little bit.
Honestly, I'm not sure I disagree with that. And particularly at the state level, it is directly interferes with the ability of the local school systems to operate because of these mandates and the reports and forms and whatever they have to do to comply with all these state standards, ostensibly to protect educating children. I think we ought to go on education to zero-based budgeting. We ought to say this: every penny that goes for education has to now justify itself. Every penny, from the U.S. Department of Education to the state to the local school board. You tell us where every penny that comes from the taxpayers is going to advance public education. Because we know this, there's not enough money in public education right now for these teachers to have adequate facilities, for adequate schools to be built, for the infrastructure for public education. We don't have that. So where's all this other money going? And I think you might find common ground with the bleeding heart Democrats on that issue. Let me tell you an interesting thing that came out of a discussion. One of my daughters is involved with a foster child, and one of the things that they learn in these children that come from circumstances where they're not as optimum as our middle class kids are, is that the parents don't talk to the children. For example, when you go into a room, you say, "I'm turning on the light." Johnny, I'm turning off the light. They don't communicate to their children. And in the really low socioeconomic homes, the TV stays on all the time.
The kid's plopped in front of the TV with a bag of chips or something.
And there's no communication to adults, two-way communication. And kids respond by that kind of communication, by practicing what you've just said to them.
That makes sense.
We haven't solved all the problems tonight, but we have addressed some of them. Thank you all for calling. Appreciate your comments, your emails, and your suggestions for our programming content. We look forward to having you here next week on Within Reason. Until then, thanks for watching.